So back to Nikola Tesla. What do you think about the pyramids?
Oh,
What were they?
so gun to my head, I think they were used to generate energy. I think there's a lot of evidence for it. For people interested in it, they can look into Christopher Dunn's work, he's done the research, the definitive research on the pyramid power plant theory. Tesla was fascinated by the pyramids, not so much for energy, but for how they were constructed, how they're constructed to true north and all of that. He was fascinated by the engineering of it. But his free energy device, a lot of that engineering can be seen in the pyramid. So Wardenclyffe Tower was his facility on Long Island, which is big, just a big tower. It looks like a water tower, but it's built over an aquifer. And what Tesla was trying to do was use the water creates this deep resonant sound that resonates with the Earth's natural frequency. Everything has a resonant frequency. Whether the Earth, this chair, our bodies, everything does. And if you can come into harmony with that frequency, it will expand, it will amplify. And there's been research that certain wavelengths broadcast at the Great Pyramid will amplify that electromagnetic energy. It's around 200 meters, I think. So Tesla is fascinated with that engineering. But the pyramid power plant theory is a lot like Tesla's technology. The Giza Plateau, there is an aquifer under there. There's a lot of water under there. And that water would create this resonant frequency. And they found copper rods that go down there that would help bring up some of the electricity or however it worked. And then in the pyramid, at the various chambers, there's residue of certain chemicals that when combined create a lot of hydrogen, like a violent reaction of hydrogen. So coming down from the Queen's chamber and then I forget the other chamber, but they're built in a way so they come down, you use gravity and you just pour these chemicals down, creates this hydrogen reaction, which we know there's residue of these chemicals there. This is not a conspiracy theory. The hydrogen expands, comes up through the gallery, which is this big hallway that goes up to the King's chamber. And they've discovered that in the Grand Gallery, there used to be these wooden posts or some kind of sort of flat wooden things. And those would create sound. It's called a Helmholtz resonator. Like when you blow across a bottle, it goes, whoo, that air is a Helmholtz resonator. So this hydrogen would come up through the chamber. These things would resonate with sound, the F sharp chord specifically, and that would cause it to build up more and more and more. The hydrogen expands. This chamber is built out of rose granite, which is an unusual type of granite because it's densely made of quartz. And when you compress quartz, it creates electricity. It's called piezoelectricity. And if you have a lot of quartz, you can create a lot of electricity. There's been experiments done where if it's a mountain of quartz, it creates something like 10 million volts, like it creates a lot of power. So you've got you've got the hydrogen expanding, creating this electricity. It's ionizing the air, amplifying it more. You've got the sound coming through, amplifying it more. And then you've got this hole leading into the King's chamber that's 4.8 inches by 8.4 inches, which is the perfect size for a hydrogen atoms microwave to just fit through as a waveguide. Comes up into the King's chamber, and the King's chamber has these pillars and on top of it, a bunch of stones that are stacked. Everything is really smooth, except the top is really rough. And forever, they thought that they called this the relieving stones, that these would relieve the pressure of the pyramids. But they're not connected to anything, so there's no pressure there. But what they found is that this creates music, creates this chord. And what the theory is it's rough on top because they would chip away at it and tune it until it was just about right. And that's why it's smooth on the bottom but rough on the top. And so you've got all this energy. So how do we get it out? Well, when the pyramids were new or, intact, the interior is made out of a certain type of limestone that electricity can move around in. The exterior is made out of a different kind of limestone called Tura limestone, which is quarried from far, far away and brought in.
Way down the Nile, right?
Way down, hundreds of miles away. Like you'll hear Zayawas talk about the limestone on the pyramid, but he never talks about the Tura limestone or the rose granite. So there's all these different. Why not just build the whole thing out of the same rocks that are right here? Why it bring the Tura limestone to Giza is like bringing the 100-ton blocks up the coast of Florida. It's like that far, but it's a special type of limestone that's very low in magnesium. It's a great insulator. So you've got this electricity, and then you've got sort of this conductor, and then you've got another insulator. And that's called a dielectric, and that creates even more power. And if you had a gold capstone on top, which is a great conductor, you can force that energy up through the capstone and up into the ionosphere. And that's what Nikola Tesla was trying to do. It's the same technology. Where I get stuck is I love all of that, and I buy it, but we don't see any evidence of what they did with the power. So the people who are really into it will say, well, the obelisks at one time also had metal capstones, so they would be receivers. Okay, but still, what did they do with it? There's no computers, there's no light bulbs. The ancient Egyptians didn't work with glass, so what did they do with it? My guess is the Egyptians didn't build any of this. Is the reason that we don't see any evidence of what the Egyptians did with power is because they didn't use it for power. I think the Egyptians just found it. And they said, wow, this is crazy. This gods must have made this. And it just became sort of this, religious type of structure. It's supposed to be the tomb for Khufu, but no mummy's ever been found in a pyramid. We've never found any of that. Now,
Wow.
Egyptologists will say, well, they were robbed. The mummies were there, but they were taken out. All right, well, there's no evidence of any of that, but there is evidence of zinc chloride at one side and hydrochloric acid on another side and sulfuric acid here. And there's an inch of salt that would up and down this chamber that would be the result of a chemical reaction. There's evidence of an explosion at some point. On all this stuff you can look up. You don't have to believe what I'm saying. I'm not trying to convince anybody. I'm just saying these things are true, and I'm just connecting the dots for my entertainment. But you can go look at them and make up your own mind.
Damn. So you think they found them?
I think they found them. I think they were there for a long time.
So what do you think that was? Previous civilizations?
Previous
aliens?
civilizations. I'm not an alien guy.
You're not an alien guy?
Not really, because I can't wrap my mind around crossing the distances of space. They're so far. Like we can't. Space is so big that the human mind we can't comprehend it.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got this comet 3I Atlas just zipping into the solar system now. It's the fastest object we've ever found. It's like 135,000 miles an hour. We've never seen a comet move this fast. It's still going to take 6 months to get through. So it's that big. So I can't get my mind around aliens, wormholes, folding space. I can't get my mind around it. But something's going on. I've seen videos. Most, I don't believe the whistleblowers. I don't believe anyone from Air Force intelligence. I don't believe any of that. And if you have a book out, I don't believe what you're saying. If you're cleared by the DOD,
I definitely don't.
I definitely don't. If you still have clearance and you're still a contractor and you're still working with DOD, I can't. You're not a whistleblower. You're doing PR. So, with all due respect, I don't believe you guys. Matthew Brown, I think his last name is Brown. He's kind of a compelling whistleblower because he doesn't go over the top. He just says, I found evidence of, something going on in space. And that's really all he says. So as far as the ancient civilizations, I don't go as far as like Graham Hancock might go, where this ancient advanced civilization. I don't want to put words in his mouth because I'm a huge admirer, huge fan. I've made at least 10 videos based around his research. But in geologic time, the surface of the Earth just turns itself inside and out every few million years. So the Earth we're standing on now just wasn't here 10 million years ago. There's only a couple of places on the planet that still have exposed rock that's 4 billion years old. I think Jack Hill in Australia, and then somewhere in Canada, like West Canada. Everything else is pretty new. So if there was a civilization, it's very easy for it just to get folded into just the tectonic activity of the Earth. And perhaps the pyramids survived that. When we see the the pictures of the discovery of the Sphinx, it was buried. No, they didn't just walk up and see a Sphinx there. They just saw like the top of a head and they're like, what's this? And they dug all that out. And then on there, we see evidence of high volume, high pressure water flow and water erosion. It's kind of hard to discount that now, which they did for years. It's hard to discount it when you look at Robert Schoch's work and Randall Carlson's work. It's, to me, it's not debatable. It's right there.
Well, also on Easter Island,
Easter Island
there's those heads that
the Moai heads. People don't realize those heads have bodies. So you see all these heads sticking up. They have bodies. So first of all, Easter Island is in the middle of nowhere. If you look at it on Google Earth, good luck, you'll never find it. You have to type it in and then pull back and see how in the middle of nowhere this place is. So you've got these statues that are, I don't know, 80 tons or whatever. So either there's 1,000 of them on the island. So either
there's 1,000
of those. So either they dug these holes and dropped in a giant statue and then filled it in, or the statues were there and then the earth came over and filled on top of it. I don't know. You know, I'm not, there's a lot of mud flood conspiracy theorists. I'm not one of those. But if those statues are really old, the earth has changed quite a bit in that time. I don't know why they're buried. Nobody does. And at one point, Easter Island had 25,000 people living on it. It's a whole society. And it's only, a few square miles, tiny little triangle.
Man, I did not realize that. I'd love to go there sometime. But aren't all these Stonehenge, the pyramids, Machu Picchu, Easter Island, I know there's more that I can't remember right now, but aren't all these things they're like a perfect line, right?
Yeah, there's the ley line theory that there are these lines of energy that go around the earth. And where these lines intersect are high energy points. And that's where these ancient sites are. And they're pretty close. But when you look at the ley line maps, you can make it look like anything. I've seen ley line maps that look like just lines everywhere. Like you can make anything fit. So I'm not totally convinced on the ley line theory.
Gotcha. I'm not that in touch with it, but it's just, have you looked into Stonehenge at all?
A little bit.
What's going on there? What do you think that is?
I really just think it wasn't Druids. It was definitely an ancient culture, but they had pretty advanced engineering. And that whole compound is really big. Like it's more than just the stones that we see. It's a whole perimeter. And then there's another site not too far from it that's even bigger, but there's not really stones there anymore. But this was a giant compound. But these stones line up so well with equinoxes that it shows that there's some type of advanced engineering. And it doesn't sound that impressive until you realize that when you ask someone what an equinox is, kind of what I was taught was it's when the day and night are the same length. That's an equinox, but that's not what it is. That's an equilux. That when day and night are equal is different for everybody on the planet, depending on where you are. An equinox is when the sun is perfectly over the equator around the earth. So whoever built Stonehenge were lining up the stones to match when the sun was perfectly over the equator, but they're not supposed to know about the equator. So how did they do that?
Man.
So if you get into the numerology of the pyramids, it's the same thing. If you take the height of the pyramid and multiply it by 43,200, it turns out to be the polar radius of the earth, and then take the perimeter and multiply it by 43,200, and it becomes the circumference of the earth. It's very easy to dismiss that, but I find it interesting. A lot of coincidences are just that, but in those there's some interesting threads to pull. And that's what I do is I just pull the threads and I lay it out like this. I tell it as excited as I am because I'm fascinated. I'm not saying I believe hardly any of it. I'm just giving you what I've found.
You've looked into remote viewing too.
Very much.
I wasn't planning on going here, but so I dove into remote viewing. I've had Joe McMoneagle, Angela Ford, Colonel John Alexander. Who am I missing? Skip Atwater. I've had Edwin May. Had them all on because so
These are big names.
yeah. Backstory. I was telling you about my friend in the road rage incident, right? And we had contracted, we were contracting at the agency together. And I remember way after we got really close after we were there, and he had mentioned that he had seen remote viewers show up at station in one of the countries that we were in. And I
Interesting.
was like, what the fuck is a remote viewer?
What year is this?
This was probably somewhere in between 2010 and 2015.
Oh, so Stargate has been shut down 20 years.
Yep. Long time after. And so we started having these chats, and he was kind of schooling me up on what they are. And I was like, are you sure? And he's like, yes, I'm 100% sure. He's not a conspiracy guy. So I started diving into it. And first guy I had on was actually this guy, Shawn Webb, who introduced me to Joe McMoneagle. And Shawn had gone through the Monroe Institute and he was like my first guy that was telling me how it worked and the hemisync and all this and the envelopes and
Army military intelligence went through that whole program.
yeah,
Oh yeah.
I'm very familiar with it at this point. But you did, I think it was you. I think I used one of your episodes for my research actually. And Joe had remote viewed some type of extraterrestrial type facility in Alaska. Was that your episode?
It's probably Pat Price. Pat Price saw under Mount Hayes.
That's it. That's it.
Mount Mother effing Hayes, he likes to call it. Pat Price he's the most believable remote viewer to me. He fascinates me. But the OGs are Joe McMoneagle, Ingo Swann, and Pat Price. Those are like the original guys from SRI, which is Russell Targ and Hal Puthoff ran that program, who are probably gettable. I'd like to see Hal on your show.
I'd love to get Hal on my show.
Yeah, he was very entertaining on Rogan, but I also made the point that Hal Puthoff has been connected to disinformation. So you got to take everything with a grain of salt.
Mm-hmm.
Remote viewing, I think there might be something to it. Most of it, I think, is nonsense. Most of it, I think, is like strip mall psychic stuff. Joe McMoneagle definitely saw some things. And you sat here with him. He's a no-nonsense guy. And I think he kind of downplays it, but this is a war hero. He was a rock star in Vietnam, and I think he has a near-death experience, and then he has these abilities. And he's definitely found some things. I think he was the one who found the Soviet sub.
That's him.
Yeah.
That was the first big thing.
Right. But Pat Price was he was a retired like police chief from Burbank, California, and he was known in the department of just being good at solving crimes. And he just kind of knew where the body was, or he knew where this guy was, or that, and he just thought like his hunches were strong. So he retired and had a little bit more time to just kind of relax and focus on his talent. And he just started to actually see that he had an ability. So Pat Price he saw in the Soviet Union giant crane on like railroad tracks that you would never even just make up. But he saw that, and then it was verified with spy plane that they saw that was real with Pat Price. So he had so many of those that that CIA just pulled him in. They pulled him out of SRI. And he really wasn't looking to do that. So he goes over there, and he's dead pretty soon after. He bumps into somebody in the lobby of a hotel in Las Vegas. He feels a pinch on his arm, goes up to his room, calls his wife, and he's dead by morning. But Pat Price remote viewed into Mount Hayes, saw a joint alien U.S. military operation inside the mountain, and he put the files together. And I think from there, he gave the files to Hal, who then gave them to Skip. I could have the timeline wrong, but it's something like that. Like Pat didn't pursue it. He gave it over to the people he trusted. And I don't know if they had anyone who can go and follow up with what Pat saw because he was really talented. But SRI taught a lot of people to do it. They had a secretary there that they were like, let's just teach her to do it and see if she can do it. And she like found a Soviet plane that went down in the Congo, like within 2 miles of accuracy. It's such a weird story. So, with someone like Joe, if he's going to do 20,000 viewings, he's going to get some right, but most of his stuff is wrong. So we tend to cherry pick the good stuff, but it doesn't discount it completely.
Yeah, that's what Edwin May told me. I think he said, and I can't remember the number, but I think it may have been around 40%. He said, yeah, he's like, none of this can be, it has to be proven for it to be like a win. And because we were talking about the pyramids on Mars that Joe had remote viewed, and he was like, Joe was only right. I'm not correct on this. It may be lower, maybe a little. It's probably lower if it's not this number. But he said Joe was only right 40% of the time.
That's a lot.
Can't prove it, then you cannot take it as fact.
Right. He said he saw all those tall beings on Mars, but he didn't know what he was remote viewing. He just got coordinates. And then they opened the envelope and it's Mars 1 million BC.
Yeah.
Which is a great story, but it's hard to verify that.
Yeah.
But Ingo Swann's another one who remote viewed the moon and saw aliens up there. And he said, aliens are not our friends. So he went up to the far side and he said, yeah, there are bases up there. They're watching us. They're all over it.
Man, that's crazy to think about, isn't it?
You what, mate?
Yeah.